Everybody, this is Marisa Portuondo, and today I am here with Duane, the owner and founder of the Freelance firm. How you doing, Steve?
I'm doing great. I'm glad to be here. Thank you, Marisa.
Good to have you. So I wanted to get you on the show. Obviously, we met probably towards the end of last year at a networking event.
Yeah, it was early November, I think. Yeah.
Okay. And you gave a presentation on your service, which I found really interesting. And so, do
Thank
you
you.
want to tell us a little bit about what it is that you guys offer?
Sure. The freelance firm I launched in March of 2018. Um, we're a network of freelance attorneys, and through my website, thefreelancefirm.com, law firms are able to access our portal and access the network of freelance attorneys to outsource pretty much any type of work they may have that they're looking to get off their desk. And that ranges anything from hearing coverage, deposition coverage, research, drafting, and custom projects, and sort of everywhere in between. So that's what we're working
Awesome.
on.
Awesome. So, I definitely want to dive a little bit more into the services. I wanted to ask you, though, what made you, it's always my favorite question, what made you go out on your own?
Well, I was a practicing attorney for I think it was between like 4 and 5 years. Prior to this, I was doing plaintiff side personal injury work, and I worked for a gentleman who was a solo, obviously, before he hired me, but just a great guy who had a lot of experience, and so I was with him for several years. But during that time, there was obviously sort of an ebb and flow to the caseload, and at one point, I guess it must have been sometime around the summer of 2017, we had really picked up. The volume was increasing, and the work was piling up. And I think it was one day I looked over, I had like a stack of files on my desk that were due for, demand letters or something, and not the type of work that was necessarily recreating the wheel. And I was like, it would just be great if I was able to find somebody who could just sort of handle this individual work and knock it out, get it off my desk for now, so I could keep sort of working on the more pressing issues I had in front of me. But we have to keep everything moving. So from there, the wheel started turning, and I thought about it more, and eventually sort of put the pieces together over the next few months, and decided it was something that I really wanted to pursue. I thought it was a valuable service that could benefit a lot of firms, and having that personal experience sort of really it resonated with me. So I ran with it. And also, my wife was pregnant with our second daughter at the time. And I said, look, if I don't do this now, there will never be a better time to do it. So, timing was a factor also.
That's awesome. A lot of people would be scared to take such a
Well, I
plunge
didn't, I
when,
didn't say I wasn't scared. I didn't say that. But yeah, I was confident that it was, a viable business idea. And so, I'd honestly always had sort of entrepreneurial, something pulling me in that direction, but I guess maybe the right opportunity hadn't come up or the right idea. And so once it finally did, it was exciting for me to be able to finally, go down that path. It was something I really had always wanted to do. I just assumed at that time it was probably ultimately going to be my own law firm, but things change.
I think it's awesome.
Thanks.
I'm a member of so many groups of attorneys, especially a lot of solos or a lot of smaller law firms. And it's a huge issue that, we have as owners. It's the constant juggle between, do I work on my firm? Do I work in my firm? Do I want to be, what they call the mule, who's,
Right.
just the person, producing all the legal work. And when you are that person, and I've experienced this, and you get sick, for example, or, something happens in life, it's life, right? Something
Of
unexpected is
course.
always going to happen at some point. I got really sick towards in the fall last year, and my revenue took a hit because I was, the main producer of legal work at my firm.
We
Something
hadn't
like
met yet at that time, so yeah.
yeah, yeah, and when something exactly, it was actually right before we met. And when something like that happens, it kind of makes you take stock of everything. And I think a lot of business owners are scared to hire and to outsource for so many reasons, financial, type A personalities, liability, and we hesitate, and then it kind of takes something like that to make you realize, like, if you're gonna grow, if you're gonna scale your business, you have to be willing to kind of hand the reins over to someone else at some point, even if it's just a little bit at a time. And I think a service like yours is so great because it's not this giant plunge into the unknown of hiring a full-time employee, and it's you can use it on an as-needed basis. So I think it's great. I think you have an awesome business model. I think you've really tapped into a big need in our market.
Yeah, I'm hoping so. I mean, it's I think you touched on a couple of good points there. First, that being a business owner, running a law firm is different than being, a business owner. If you own a hardware store or what, running a business in and of itself is extremely challenging, extremely demanding. It will consume your thoughts all the time. Now, then you add in actually the practice of law, and that's a whole nother beast, and a whole, more added stress, and it requires so much brain power constantly, and thinking on your toes, and it's so, doing both of those is twice as hard. So there are issues in terms of, I think, what you said from a financial aspect as lawyers, and I'm a lawyer myself, so certainly not saying anything bad about lawyers, but I think a lot of either solo practitioners or owners of small firms, there's very much a cash flow mentality in terms of what can I afford this month, or as opposed to or what's an expense, is this expense going to generate revenue directly, immediately, whatever, and if not, okay, no, we can't afford it, we're not going to spend money on it. And I get it, because now, as a business owner myself, now I get bouts of that myself, and I look at those expenses that come up to say what's worthwhile, what isn't, what's going to help drive the business forward, or not. But it's important to really try and maintain a little bit of a longer term perspective, especially when it comes to, as an attorney running a small firm, the idea is to get your cases moving through the pipeline, or to be, producing as many billable hours as possible. And so it's hard to step out of your comfort zone with different things. And I've had countless interactions with attorneys in just the, almost 2 years I've been doing this, where that's what it is. It's either, I don't think I can afford this right now, or I don't know exactly what you meant by type A personality, but I think I did, where, in terms of not wanting to relinquish control over your work. I represent this client. I'm the only one who can produce this work in the way that it needs to be done. And while I'm sure each attorney is right in saying that to some degree, for the most part, you can outsource a lot of that work and still have it done to a very high level. But it'll get the job done, it'll get the hours billed, and it'll also free you up to do other things. So it's important to try and have to look at it from all angles and see how it could really have an impact on your firm.
Yeah, absolutely. All those struggles that you just mentioned are things that I've gone through also as a business owner. It's so scary when you finally start making money to let go of that money, because you worry that it's not going to come back, for example, or sometimes if you have those feast and famine type law firms, or practice areas, or just even seasonal work sometimes. I know for me, winter is always a slower time because my clients are business owners, and so if they're slow, they're kind of spending more time with their family, and no one really wants to get involved in disputes and litigation right before the holidays. So I get that, and I remember when I first started trying to wrap my head around hiring associate or a contract attorney or contract paralegal, anything like that, I was like, well, I can just do it myself and I'll make more money because I don't have any overhead if I do it myself. And that's what I think slows down so much growth in business, is that you don't realize when you're doing that work, first of all, you're not doing other work. Two people could be billing at the same time if you have someone, on contract, for example, and you're also not out there selling your business and meeting people and making those connections that you need to make. grow your business. So I
That's
challenge.
exactly right. Yeah, and it's not even necessarily outsourcing legal work, but like you're saying, yeah, if when it comes to being an attorney, your time is what makes you valuable. That's you have to keep an eye on it on how you spend every minute of every day if you really want to be as efficient and cost effective as possible for in building your practice. So you have to look at those things and say, okay, well, you know, should I find a bookkeeper or something to make the spreadsheet for my monthly expenses, or should I spend 2 hours doing it? Or, should I spend those 2 hours billing at $3.50 an hour? And yeah, find somebody on, Fiverr or Upwork or maybe somebody who can do, some of that administrative work on a part-time basis. There you go. That to me is a no-brainer. But when you're in the thick of it, sometimes you don't see it that way, just like you're saying. And it's sort of, I think that's just a natural feeling.
Yeah, and I also think the more people do it, the easier it gets, right? You have that fear
Oh,
the first time
1,000%. Yeah.
first time you
Well,
ever hire
it's
someone.
just about getting comfortable with it, and also about it helps when you can see the results when you take that step or you take that risk. Like I said, you step outside your comfort zone a little bit in terms of letting go of some work, and then you're like, oh, well, I was able to get this done. That work came in, it was done well. I was able to bill for that, and then you sort of see how the process works on the back end, and you get more comfortable with it, and then you want to continue with it.
Absolutely. So one thing that I think that kind of distinguishes your service from other similar services is that you actually offer people to physically go and make appearances, which is, I can't tell you, for someone like me, for example, I live pretty far away from the courthouse. Traffic to get downtown is
In
insane in
Miami too,
Miami.
yeah, it's
It's
miserable.
it's ridiculous. You have that struggle of, do I charge my client for the travel time? Is it okay to charge my, don't want to, but maybe you have to if you're gonna, make it. But sometimes you have this like tiny hearing that is ridiculous, but the other
Right.
side isn't budging. You have to go in front of the judge, and it just doesn't feel right to spend 4 hours of your time, because clients don't understand it's the travel time. And then just because you have a hearing at 8:30 in the morning doesn't mean you get to see the judge at 8:30 in the morning, because 30 other attorneys.
Not yeah, but no, not only that. Back it up to the night before. Okay, it's 5:30. You're in your office. You're like, all right, I got to print the motion. I got to print our response. I got to print the notice of hearing. So I have everything. Maybe opposing counsel needs copies. You're putting this folder together. You're preparing. You wake up. You're driving. You're there. You're waiting for the judge, however long motion calendar is. And then you're driving back, and you get to your office at 10 or 11, and then your staff or maybe has questions, or you have a bunch of emails, and then all of a sudden it's lunchtime, and then you look back and it's 1:30, and you're like, wow, I have done nothing today, of to be productive. It can eat up a day so quickly, things like that.
Exactly. You're talking probably, at least an hour for an easy motion, to prep, like you said, even if it's just to get your folder ready. If it's a complex motion, I've prepped till 5 in the morning sometimes, because, I had work to do, other work, or I had, stuff I had to take care of, family, whatever. You're up all night prepping for the harder motions. You're waiting. Again, I don't think clients understand, like, literally it's a cattle call, right? And there's 30 attorneys waiting to go up in front of the judge at 8:15. So, sometimes you don't leave there till noon. You're talking about 8 maybe billable hours if you include travel time for 5 minutes in front of the judge.
Yeah,
Um,
totally.
and it's been such a point of contention for me. It's just been such a difficult thing in my personal life to manage all of that, because I also have a child, and my husband leaves to work really early in the morning. So, any time that I have to go down to court, I have to find a way to make it work.
Hmm.
And knowing that I can send someone down to court, which I have done, but it's always been on the recommendation of someone, and I was always a little nervous. I've only done it 1 or 2 times. So when I met you and you told me that that was one of the things that you offer, I was like, because,
Right.
knowing that it's someone who's been vetted, and that it's someone I can trust, and that it's someone who's going to do the job right, and it's going to it's going to cost the client less, it's going to cost me, way less of my time. It's win-win. I mean, I don't know how I couldn't take
Think
advantage
of
of it.
Yeah, but we're only talking about time. I mean, just think about in that timeline you just discussed. Think about all the stress you're talking about with the prep, the late night, the worrying about how you're going to get your kid to daycare or to school or to whatever and make it to the hearing on time. I hope traffic isn't that bad today. Like, it's exhausting. So, obviously there are situations where attorneys probably should appear personally, but in many instances, I really think that being able to outsource something like that is very beneficial on multiple levels.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Mm.
A motion to compel some, ridiculous discovery response. It doesn't merit 8 hours of the senior attorney, stressing and billing the client.
Not at all.
So I'm very excited that that's, a service that you guys offer. Now, how do you guys vet your attorneys?
Well, it's been, I was fortunate in that when I started promoting this and trying to get the word out after I launched it, that just through like social media and other places and personal relationships and references to those personal relationships, that I had a lot of people reaching out to me with interest in doing freelance work. So I was able to be pretty selective right off the bat in terms of building sort of a balanced network of attorneys that could handle various types of work as they came in. And I've continued to try to do that as the network has grown. It's a bit of a balancing act, but, we review disciplinary history, resume. I also ask them, for writing samples or samples of work. And these are all things that I provide to hiring attorneys, on request. So that information is available. And so, after I will review that information myself and then obviously speak and interview with the freelance attorney and follow up with the references they provide, I always allow or encourage the hiring attorneys that they'd like to speak with some of the freelance attorneys that could potentially be a good fit for the work they want to send, just to let them get comfortable and sort of ask any questions that, and also it's tough for me because while I was an attorney, obviously my company services firms that practice many areas of law that I have no experience in. And so there's a lot of things that I can't speak too intelligently about on that level. And so being able to put freelance attorneys in touch and allow them to make that connection directly and, to speak about some of those things that I really can't get into is helpful. And it allows, make sure everybody's on the same page before we go forward and that everybody's comfortable, and so I try to do my best to accommodate, whatever will help make the hiring attorneys comfortable in outsourcing their work with us.
Yeah, I think that's smart. I think, again, as attorneys, it's our license on the line. I heard this expression recently and I thought, oh, that's the perfect way to just succinctly say it. And they say, delegation is not abdication, right? Still have to make sure that the person is doing a good job. You still have to review their work before you submit it, all of that stuff. But, 5 minutes of reviewing a motion compared to,
right,
as we all know, what the drafting is like, is just a godsend. So I wanted
or even at the very least, it's, our goal is always to present, especially with drafting, present the hiring attorneys with the absolute closest thing to the finished product that they can just sign and file or whatever. Now, obviously, yes, they have a duty to review that and make sure that it's ready to go. But, even at the very least, being able, we've had attorneys who have outsourced work where they just sort of either, put a structure together or put an outline together or, at least get me halfway home and then I can take it and run, and it saves them all that time. So it really all depends too on how you want to use it and how you can sort of tailor our support to have the biggest impact for you, because every attorney works differently, every firm runs a little bit differently, and so there are little nuances there. But the good part is that we can be pretty flexible with that in terms of how we can adapt for their needs.
Yeah, like you said, there's attorneys that love to do research and there's attorneys that hate to do research. So, maybe you love to write, but you hate to do the research. So that's a great, you want to write the motion, but you don't want to sit there for 3 hours, digging up the case law.
Plus with research, if I know most who doesn't go down the rabbit hole when when they're researching, right? Anytime I'm like, okay, I'll jump on Westlaw for half an hour to quit, and then all of a sudden, the case line, I'm like, it's, you're on there for hours, and time just speeds by. But yeah, that's a great example.
Yeah, and maybe you have, a deadline or something, so you're like, all right, you work on the research, I'll start the skeleton, or maybe you have your, contract paralegal or whoever, your legal assistant typing up the skeleton, then you just need to jump in and make it sound good.
Mm-hmm.
There's just so many ways to use your service, which I think is great. So I'm actually
And
looking
also
at.
not just,
Go ahead.
what's that? No, I was
No,
gonna
no, go.
say, and also not just with, a freelance attorney coordinating maybe with multiple people in the hiring attorney's office, but also the ability of the hiring attorney to utilize multiple freelance attorneys at one time. So it's not just like a one-on-one thing necessarily. We have attorneys who are submitting work to multiple attorneys simultaneously. Obviously increasing their productivity, but it's it's all, like you said, how you want to use it.
So have you had attorneys, for example, I know, sometimes you don't want to turn away work, but you kind of feel like you have to, either because A, you're too busy, or B, it's kind of in your wheelhouse, but, I know like when you're hungry and you're new, the door law, anything that comes in the door, you take
Right.
it. But as you start to get a little more seasoned, you realize it's just so not worth it because you're spending all
Yeah.
this time learning that you can't charge the client for, at least not ethically. So do you have attorneys who, for example, are like, well, I kind of like 70% know that, but I don't 100% know it. So rather than, spend the next 5 hours trying to figure it out, banging my head against the wall, let me delegate this out to someone who does know this. Have you had attorneys use your service that way? Because I could see that being a great way to not turn away business, and still provide good service.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think so. There's two things when you say turn away business. One thing that's come up quite a bit is where attorneys practice an area of law that they don't love, or they're like, they don't get an enjoyment out of it, or maybe it generates revenue, but it's not the big hit that the other areas they practice might be for the practice, for the firm. So another unique way to utilize a service like mine is where you can still, you don't have to turn that work away anymore. You don't have to just say, okay, let's turn off that valve. We don't want to do those cases anymore. Where you could, because you're not only losing out on that revenue, on that cash flow, whatever, but you're also losing out when you turn away work on the relationships you build with those clients who are more often than not are going to be your biggest referral source for more business down the road. And so that's, when I hear attorneys talk about that, I'm like, well, do you have to give it up? I mean, are there any aspects of it you do like? How much of it could you outsource? Can you still keep that, can you still keep that going, keep that money coming in, keep the lights on? And you don't really, just with you don't have to deal with too much of the work except being the point person with the client, obviously. But then really frees you up to focus more of your time on the stuff that you're either passionate about or that's really driving the revenue of the firm.
Absolutely.
And then, sorry, so I forgot there was the flip side of that. So in terms of where attorneys have some knowledge, but maybe they want to bring somebody who's got more specialized knowledge, yeah, that it is a great way to use some of the attorneys in our network. We have a number of them who are just highly experienced in certain areas with 20, 25 plus years in practice, which is they are tremendous resources, I will say, for the attorneys that they do work for. Just to the point where some of it has even developed into like strategic consulting relationships that we provide now, where they'll, have periodic phone calls with the attorneys to bounce ideas or get objective feedback or try to get somebody else's eyes on something. And that wasn't really something I had necessarily anticipated at the beginning of this. So it's been interesting to see how things pop up like that, but it was just another valuable way that we could contribute to attorneys that was really having, it was benefiting them. So that was exciting to see. But so the short answer to your question is yes, that is a great use of freelance attorneys also, provided that you have enough knowledge and experience as a hiring attorney in that area to competently represent your client in that area. So that's a distinction to be made. I'm not the judge and jury on that. Obviously, that's left to the hiring attorney's judgment, but I always like to remind them of that ethical obligation.
Right. You don't want to be a PI attorney who's now, doing criminal law because they found some contract attorney that's going to handle the hearing. But absolutely,
Or
for
it
example,
probably more often comes up where somebody who doesn't practice PI wants to take on a PI case because they're, on contingency, they can be big hits and it can be, it can change the trajectory of your firm, of your career. So, I get where they're coming from, but those cases are not nearly as cut and dry as people may think.
I agree. I used to do PI when I worked for someone else, and yeah, they can be incredibly complex. And I actually hear a lot of PI attorneys
And
complain
not only
about
that, yeah,
people dabbling. Yeah.
yeah, and you can't be. And the thing about PI too is that when you're representing those clients, oftentimes they are at one of the lower points in their life, and that's really when they need somebody who's going to go in and really, dig their heels in for them, and not just somebody who's sort of doing this on a whim, you know.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you about that frame you got behind you. I heard about your daily business review award for, what is it, Legal Trailblazers? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, that was pretty exciting. So that was a peer nominated placement on their list, their 2019 Florida Legal Trailblazers list, and essentially they just put together a number of different attorneys who are obviously either practicing directly or working in legal adjacent capacities somehow, who are, according to them, having bringing innovation to the field and trying to impact the field in different ways and just sort of change the nature of how certain things are done. Obviously, the law is a bit of a stodgy or very conservative minded, not politically obviously, but just old school type profession that's been dragging its heels into the modern time here. So, I think there was a great list of attorneys doing lots of different things, and so yeah, that was really exciting. I was very very honored to have received that, especially because it was a peer nominated thing. So that was a big one. I was very happy about that.
Awesome. Congrats.
As you can tell by the frame, obviously
Yeah.
I
Hey, man, you got to toot
and
your own
I will
horn
say that
sometimes.
I had it. There was when I launched this, I was like, okay, I want to get some sort of recognition or an award or something. Not for a personal thing, but just as the company starts to get visibility, I was like, that would be a cool little milestone. And so that was actually like the first sort of official recognition the company got in a publication like that. So hence the framing. But yeah, it was cool. I was excited.
That's awesome. I think it's, we get burned out a lot, I think, as attorneys, and said we are dinosaurs. I'll be less political about it. We are dinosaurs when it comes to technology and the way we run our businesses and all of this stuff. But I think that's finally starting to change.
I would agree with that. It's
I think
definitely changing.
Yeah, I think it's such an exciting time for our field. I think that the technology is exploding. It's such a huge market right now for technology, for new ways of doing business. People freak out when I tell them I almost never meet my clients in person, especially because they're business owners, they're busy. Sometimes maybe the older people or the people who like to do things the old school way.
But
They
think
want to
about
come
how
in.
convenient that is, and think about how many more opportunities that opens up for a practice like yours. It's I think probably, I don't know how proactively the law is changing as opposed to reactively, because when you think about the client or the consumer, how they can find lawyers now. Okay, well, they can read 50 different websites that have reviews on it. They can Google anybody in however many counties around them. It's not like, hey, okay, we have to just walk down the street to Joe's law office and he can help us out because he's the closest lawyer. I mean, it makes things so much more competitive for attorneys, that we have to find ways to be as efficient as possible to get our message out there as effectively as possible and to sort of cut through all the noise. But yeah, I think you're right. It's definitely changing. And from all angles too. It really is. But it's fun. It's fun to watch. It's fun to be on my side and see it. I'm hoping to catch that wave at the right time, obviously. But I think from billing models to practice management software to AI in terms of how it's used with like discovery review and contract review and things, to outsourcing and changing the business model and sort of balancing the when is it appropriate for a full-time associate or multiple full-time associates or support staff, as opposed to figuring out, okay, what about doing it this way, and how's that going to benefit my business? So it's a cool time to see all this going on.
I think you are very timely with what is going on, because I think I've been practicing now for almost 13 years. Yeah. And when I started out, there wasn't even like Facebook groups where you could talk to other attorneys.
Yeah, I know.
And so, now that that's been going on for quite some time, you're if you're a part of it, like you kind of have your ear to the ground and you know what's going on with trends. And I've seen such a change, and I see that solos are maturing as entrepreneurs. They are getting more comfortable with delegation. They are getting more comfortable with scaling their businesses. And so I think your timing couldn't be any better, to be honest. So.
Well, I appreciate that. And it's not only that, the other aspect of it too is that it's easier than ever to go out and hang a shingle, right? Okay, I have my virtual receptionist who's answering the phones. I have my shared workspace that I can get for $100 a month. I create my entity on the state website, and off we go. So obviously there's pros and cons to that in terms of making hopefully attorneys are not doing that until they feel they have the adequate experience. I never would have felt comfortable doing that right out of school. I did not think law school prepared me enough to be a lawyer by any means.
No way. I agree.
But I was fortunate to have some good internships that gave me some good exposure to different types of work, which was good. But now being able to just graduate, pass the bar, and open a firm is it's sort of a new prospect a little bit, because there was always the tradition of going working your way under somebody, and then obviously at some time making a move, and then maybe having a book of business or whatever. But because it's so available, or you're able to do it now, you don't necessarily need to have 10 clients in your pocket already to keep the lights on. You can do it bootstrap and then work your way up. And so, I don't know, it creates a lot of opportunities for people too, which is cool.
Yeah, absolutely. It's easy to keep overhead low now.
Yeah.
I also think, there's not the opportunities that there used to be at law firms. It used to be law school was a guaranteed way to make money, way to be successful. We all probably went into law school thinking that was going to be the case.
Yeah, it would be like Harvey Specter billing out $1,000 an hour. I thought it was, whatever.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly. And, I graduated right before the economy tanked. And so that was a very big kick in the pants for, my class and the people who graduated around the time that we graduated. And, so many firms started to close down. I kind of bounced from small firm to small firm at the beginning of my career because of finances. It would be like they'd call me into their office and they'd be like almost in tears. This is, I can't afford you anymore. I'm so sorry. It was never about a personality or quality issue or anything like that. So many times it was that these people couldn't, but back then people still felt like they needed to have the big office and they needed to have all this, expensive stuff. And that's changed so much. So I think because of the lack of opportunity, the lack of stability, that's also led to so many more people, just like you said, opening up their firms right out of law school. It's kind of crazy, but it's also kind of awesome, as long as they're not, doing any harm. I think it's great. And there's more than ever, these mentorships out there, like on, the groups and all that. There's so much more information available to these people than there were when I went out on my own. I was terrified. I had no one to bounce anything off of. I'd have to pick up the phone and call someone and beg for their time. Now you can just go on a group and throw out a question, and a bunch of people will jump in and kind of chime in and help you out, which is such a great thing to see in our profession.
It is, although I'll tell you, sometimes some of the questions I see pop up on those
are a little scary.
Pages, that's scary to the point where I'd be like, I would be embarrassed to ask that question among my peers, where, you know what I mean? Like that's something like take 5 seconds and crack a book or even Google before you go off it. You know
Google,
what I mean?
yeah,
You'll probably get an answer. Um,
I agree. Or
but
like maybe you shouldn't be practicing in this area if you don't know what you're doing.
yeah, we're not on your own anyway.
Right.
But I think what I was going to say is, so yeah, these younger attorneys coming out of school or at least starting firms much earlier, what they may lack in experience, just strictly because of time, they they have other skill sets for marketing and social media and generating business that way that the older attorneys that would bring them up don't necessarily have. So I mean, you
Absolutely.
see that where the older attorneys, yeah, they have that book of business and they have that sort of reliability there, but the ability for newer attorneys to go out and leverage their social media connections and their savvy with that type of thing just because that's the age that we've come up in or they've come up in. I'm a little older than them probably, but that's they can sort of scale up more quickly or get exposure more quickly than those other attorneys did at that time. So I feel like with any sort of marketplace there's going to be ups and downs and actions and reactions in which that change the nature of the business, but it's just everybody's trying to get paid basically. We just figure out different ways to do it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, I kind of wanted to ask you, since you mentioned your family, I love asking men this question because I feel like you guys never get asked this question. So, how do you balance work and life? I think that's actually becoming an issue now for men because, you guys are more involved than I think our parents were, our fathers were, and certainly our grandfathers, as far as, child rearing and being present for your family. And as a business owner, has it been a struggle for you going out on your own, or have you found that you actually have more time for your family, or a little bit of both?
Um, yeah. First of all, I appreciate you bringing this very taboo issue to light. Nobody's. No, I was talking to my friends about this the other day. We're like, man, nobody talks about the dads. Nobody's worried about the dads. But I
I'm
kid. I
worried
mean,
about you.
thank you. Um, it's honestly been great. I work a lot more hours than I did when I was practicing. Number one, I'm okay with that because it's mine and I love it and I'm constantly thinking about it and excited about it. So that in itself makes a big difference. And also, yeah, I have no commute. I don't have like a boss in the way that I do have a boss like my clients, obviously, or whatever. But I mean, in terms of somebody who's at work who can affect the way that you feel or affect how you're going to leave the office, and you're like, oh man, he was really riding me today, and I'm just kind of, you come home to the kids, and I'm just, and so things like that were an issue. When I was at the firm, I had my one daughter, and but yeah, even with one daughter, it was constant. My wife works a demanding job. She's a vice president at Zimmerman Advertising. She's got they're always, busy and hectic. And so there was a lot of balancing. And I appreciate her support with this, by the way, but we'll probably touch on that too. But, the balancing of daycare pickup and drop off, right? Who can drop off this morning? Who can pick up? Oh, hey, I just got called into a late meeting. Can you leave? And I was like 30 minutes away, and it was 3, 4, even 5 times a week. This would come up, and it's just stressful and chaotic. And so, being able to eliminate those things and to make my own schedule, and also to carve out the times of day that I want to work. Like when my kids go to bed, yeah, I'll jump back on the computer at 8 o'clock and work for a couple hours maybe, or what. But having that flexibility and being able to accommodate my wife much more now, where I could say, okay, I'm home, or I can start dinner now if before the kids come home, or I can do drop off and pick up today. Don't worry about it. So being able to take those things off of our mind is great, and I think it's very much improved the quality of our interaction with the kids and stuff, like when they get home at night and things like that. So I'm very grateful for that, actually.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So you touched on something that I think is a big issue for a lot of business owners, especially solo attorneys, small business attorneys, any small business really that's just trying to make it. Um, And that's, how do you turn it off? That's been a struggle for me, and I had to kind of force myself. And I'll let you in on my little secret, but I want to hear, if you have a way of turning it off, what is that way?
Well, I think I think for attorneys running a practice, I think I think it's important that you have to shut it off at some point, because if your mind is churning constantly, then the things that you're thinking about are like your client's problems. They're not even necessarily your problems. So you're going to bed and you're like, staring at the ceiling thinking about, some breach of contract and what's going to happen to your client, this and that. Now, obviously that's a valid concern, but at the end of the day, like you do have to turn that off. The the distinction for me in is that, like, a lot of time I don't really get the feeling that I want to turn it off, because I'm not necessarily thinking about something like that. It's more about like, oh, how can I develop this, or what's the next thing for this, or so, and I'm still in the early stages. I'm sure that will probably have to change at some point, because it is kind of all consuming. But um, it's there are times when I do that. I try to play some golf from time to time, although that generally adds more stress than any of the work I do does. So um,
Yeah.
I don't know how helpful that is overall, but yeah, I feel I'm pretty lucky that I'm so into it. I think I just have to be. If I wasn't, then I don't know if it would actually work.
Yeah.
Um, Now my wife may have a different answer. She may be like, yeah, she can turn it off. She's like, yeah, just stop talking about it, because it's like she gets tired. But it's always, there's always something cranking, and it's even when we say we shut it off, like you're saying, I don't. Do you ever really fully? Other than, it's hard.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for me, the biggest change, and I understand that not every practice area can necessarily do this, because, for example, if you're a criminal attorney or you're a PI attorney, you might want to be accessible at all hours, or at least have an answering service that's accessible at all hours. You don't want to miss that, one big fish that happens at 2 in the morning. But,
For your client,
as a
one phone
business
call from
attorney,
jail.
yeah, exactly. But as a business attorney, everything that I do, I work in business, I work in construction, I work in property damage, like, nothing's going to get done over the weekend. And I feel like the vast majority of legal work is that way. And I think we kind of torture ourselves and make ourselves feel like we have to be available to our clients at all times. We have to be, checking that email and getting those notifications. I see it so much in the groups, where these solos and these small law firm owners are talking about, well, I was emailing my client at 11 o'clock at night, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, stop. I used to be that person because I thought I had to be that person. When I became a mother, I really got serious about being present, and I don't even remember when I started doing it. It may have been when I was pregnant. I honestly don't remember, but I found this app, and I honestly can't believe that Gmail doesn't offer this as a setting. Maybe they do now, but at the time they didn't. So I found an app that stops syncing your emails to your phone,
Ah,
and it
smart.
has a schedule. It has a schedule, so my emails shut off at 6 p.m. every night, no matter what. And that on Friday, today, at 6 p.m., my email will shut off, including my personal email account, by the way, and it will not resync until 8 a.m. Monday morning. Maybe I have
Really?
to change that. Yes. And
Does it give
so
you does it give you a little anxiety just saying that, though? Like, oh, what if I miss
I
stuff?
did at the beginning. I was
Yeah.
terrified, and I thought,
Good
oh
for
my
you. That's
gosh,
really good.
I'm going to miss some major emergency. But guess what? I'm going on like 2.5 years now of doing
Yeah, you're
this.
still here.
Zero blowback. The clients have never complained. Um, if I need to check my email, I can go into my, settings and sync my email. For example, if I'm, waiting for something that I need, desperately for whatever reason. Sometimes you're working out a settlement negotiation over the weekend to avoid trial or avoid, some major hearing. But so you can turn it back on. But 99.9% of the time, I am not affected by emails at night. And it's made such a huge difference in my life, because the fact is, even if I had the discipline to not respond, which I used to, I would say I'm not going to respond, because then then it's expected. That's when everyone's going to start emailing me. I'm watching TV with my husband, and it's like the wheels start turning. You just
Yeah,
because you read the email, even if you don't respond, that's it. You're no longer present.
that's
And
right.
so that has been a huge, huge benefit for me, because I
That's
am
really
in my
good.
head like you said, I do lay in my bed at night thinking about my
Yeah.
clients' cases. If I build for the time I think about my clients' cases, I could
Wouldn't that
retire
be
by
nice?
now.
Yeah.
But so you have to take those little, you have to get those little tricks and figure out how you can turn it off, or else you're just going to burn out, and then you're not going to be good for anyone, not your clients, not your family, not yourself.
You're,
So that's my tip, I guess.
I give you
Um,
credit there. That's tough. Shutting it off all weekend, that's impressive. And you know, the at the very least, in some of the work that you do, or at least you know what you could, is that you'd be like, all right, fine. You want to email me or call me on the weekend, client? Then you know you're going to be paying for it. I'm going to bill you for every
right,
second of that phone call, for every second of that email. It's so
right.
much worse for the contingency people, where you know, and unfortunately, in my experience, in a lot of times, those are the clients that are, I don't want to say abuse it the most, but maybe expect it or will test the limits of that because
They're
again, a
not
lot
paying
of them,
for it.
especially in personal injury, they can be in very sort of desperate situations. Either they're out of work or what's going on, and they want updates, and that's understandable. But I've also found that when you set those boundaries from the beginning and you enforce them, I find that the clients also sort of respect it as a, you know, as opposed to being like too available. I don't know what it is, some element of like, you know, professionalism to it or something, but you know, I've found that sort of clients, they will respect it, but you really have to set those boundaries and stick to them.
I I always tell other attorneys that, when they're like, oh, but I don't know how to stand up to my client. They don't ever say I don't know how to stand up to my client, but that's basically what they're saying. And I always
Right.
remind them, like, why would you be a pushover with your client when they're hiring you to be an advocate for them?
Be a
Like,
hard ass. Yeah. Right.
if they can out negotiate you, then what use are you to them? You know what I mean? Like, you kind of need to be a hard ass a little bit because that's why they're hiring you at the end of the day. If they can out negotiate you, then why are they even paying you to negotiate their case? So, that's kind of a nice reminder for
Great
people.
point.
Like, it is okay to be tough with your clients sometimes, when they need it. And not necessarily like abusive, obviously, or anything like that. But like you said, to set those boundaries because, yeah, PI is extremely emotional. I do, property damage, which is also on contingency. And these people,
Right.
sometimes they have a hole in their roof. I mean, it's life
Yeah.
changing sometimes when, your house is underwater or whatever is going on. But again, um, setting those expectations at the beginning, like in any relationship, is just huge. So,
Well, so let me ask you this though: how long had you been practicing before you flipped the switch on that? Because I think you're right. Like when I started this company, any phone call, anything, I'm dropping everything. Okay, what is it? You know, and it's like some measly whatever. It was, nothing worthwhile. Or I would take any phone call and let it drag on for any amount of time, and not valuing my time, thinking that I was, so anxious or desperate to try and get the business in this door law, like you're talking about, that you're like, yeah, I'll pick up the phone at 3 in the morning, whatever it is.
yeah,
But it's really true. It's like, if you if you said, I feel like you'll do better with when you don't. Like if you chase it like that, the business won't come like that. But if you set those boundaries and you are who you are and you set the tone with your clients and all that, then it really is much better for the attorney. But it takes a while to get there because you're not confident in the business, or you just haven't gotten to
absolutely.
that level yet. Yeah.
I, you know, I always say it's like dating. The relationship you have with clients, like a bad client is like a bad boyfriend or girlfriend or whatever. Like they're gonna get in your way of finding good clients, just like a bad boyfriend would get in the way of you finding a healthy relationship. And setting those boundaries and respecting yourself, it just makes a better relationship for everybody. It does take time to get there, especially when you're hungry, especially when the funds are low and the debts are high. You have that temptation. But when I shifted my mentality around, I'm not going to give free legal information on the phone anymore. I mean, I was
Right. Or
giving everything
consultations,
away.
things like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
was giving everything away, just like, because I just wanted to help people. And I realized, like, oh my gosh, people were just taking advantage of me. And I think one person too many, took advantage of me. And I was a mom. I was a brand new mom. And I still remember exactly where I was standing when it happened. I was standing in my Florida room. I was working from home. And I was on my cell phone using my Google Voice number. And I spoke for half an hour with this contractor who was super nice, whatever. But as soon as it got to, all right, are you going to hire me? You know, what's going to happen here? Gave me the runaround, and I hung up the phone. I looked at my phone, and I had spent like 27, 29 minutes on the phone with him, something like that. And I calculated my billable rate, and I thought, I just gave this guy almost $200 for free.
Yeah.
This guy that I've never met before, who I'm never going to hear from again,
Exactly.
who isn't a friend of a friend or a relative or anything like that. I just took money out of my baby's mouth and gave it to this stranger. And
Right.
for what? You know, I never heard from him again. I actually did a few months later when he tried to get more free information out of me, and then I told him he had to set up a consultation. Yeah, told him to set up a consultation. That was the last I heard from him. That was the answer right there. Right. So I think that was the shift, was when I realized like I was hurting my family almost by being too giving. And it's sad that, you know, that's the reality, but sometimes people do take advantage. I feel like especially here in South Florida that happens a lot, you know.
Yeah. Well, I've never been a lawyer anywhere else, so I can't speak to that necessarily, but I think it's funny when you think about it, like it's the things that it's often the things that are sort of counterintuitive that will drive your business the most. I don't know if that's how I want to say it or not, but like, you know, especially with attorneys, you're like, okay, be less available. And your clients will, okay, oh, now my clients respect me because they can't walk all over me. They like that, weirdly, but that's counterintuitive because you think your clients would like you to be available 24/7. Or, you know, don't practice door law, you know, pick a specialized area and focus on that and watch how much more business you get. Or raise your rates. Most people think they have to dip their rates to get more business, but more often than not, they're going to find it really doesn't have a positive impact on the business. When they raise their rates, they find that they start making more money. And it's these things that are counterintuitive, especially for business owners who are sort of earlier on in the process, because the first thing is you're like, do whatever I can, be available whenever, give them, you know, the lowest possible price to get the business, and those are things that will hurt you in the long run.
Yeah, and I think all that comes with experience and testing it out. You know, you're so terrified. I remember the first time I raised my rates. Yeah, the first time I raised my rates to, you know, a significant amount of money, and I thought, oh my God, I'm going to lose all my clients. I just lost the bad ones, you know, because the good ones recognized the value that I was providing them, and they were so decent about it. You know, they were like, sure, you know, I love you. You do a great job for me. I have a lot of repeat business since I do business law and construction law,
and that gives you even more confidence, because then you're like, oh wait, whoa, I am worth this much money. Because it is weird when you're like, who the hell am I to charge $400 for an hour of time? You know what I mean?
Exactly.
I've had that thought. It's you know, in my experience with this too, and so you're right. But then when people use it and they see the value and they keep coming back and nobody even mentions the price, you're like, oh wow, like that's some really key validation right there.
Exactly. The validation, I think, just kind of like grows on itself. And so for sure, I definitely wanted to ask you, you know, who is your ideal client, right? Because I definitely want people who are listening to think, I'm very big on being a resource. I always like to ask people that question, like, who's your ideal client? Because you'd be surprised, you know. I had a therapist that I network with once say, oh, I want to meet lactation consultants. And I was like, what? You know, that was like the last person I would have expected her to say, and it was because she's growing her 4th trimester program. Okay, well that makes sense, but I didn't know that, and I never would have known that if we hadn't discussed that topic. So, you know, I think I have a pretty good idea, but for our audience, who is your ideal client?
Well, would it be okay if I asked you what, just obviously from an outsider's perspective, being you, what would you say? You know, I'm interested in your feedback on this actually. What would you think would be my prototypical or ideal client, you know, for this type of work?
I mean, honestly, I could see an attorney of any law firm size using your services, because I feel like I've worked in big law, I've worked in little law, I've worked in medium law, and I think there's always a crunch, right? There's always a time and a place where, oh my gosh, you know, this deadline's coming, we don't have enough, you know, manpower, someone's on vacation, someone's on maternity leave, someone's sick, or maybe you took on more, you know, you bit off more than you could chew. Yeah. And so that's where I could see maybe, you know, the bigger law firms using you. But I would suspect that your biggest pool of clients are like me, who aren't these giant law firms, who want to grow and scale their businesses, who are ready to take that plunge, maybe don't necessarily have, you know, so much work that they can hire a ton of full-time work, or maybe their work, does this and they don't want to take someone on full-time because they don't want that poor person to, like, come on and then get laid off and all that stuff. That's who I would imagine is your ideal client. I think it's someone who's educated about business and who's willing to take that plunge. And I think maybe that's a big thing for you, is to educate people.
Yeah, no, I agree. So that last thing that you said was actually going to be the first thing that I was going to say, in that my ideal client is an attorney who is open-minded. It's not, this isn't, freelance support is not some, out of this world concept. I mean, it's been there and used in many different ways in many different professions for, contract work is nothing new, but again, you're right about me having to educate people. It's hugely important, not only just about what about the services we do, but how they can use it and how it can benefit their firm. A big part of that is educating people in terms of my message about freelance support is, traditionally it's been used more as a crutch, where, like you said, oh, I'm on a deadline, or I bit off more than I get you, or I just got this new client and they sent a bunch more work than I anticipate. It's going to take me at least 3 months before I can get, 2 or 3 full-time associates hired, trained, and up to speed on this. What am I going to do? And those have come up. Some of my biggest projects have been from things like that, which it's an extremely valid use for freelance support. However, what I'm really focused on is also showing attorneys how they can use it more proactively as a tool for growth for their business. There's so many conversations with attorneys who are like, if I get to once I get to 5 associates, I'll feel like I really have a good firm. This is the size that I want. Or, I had a meeting with an attorney recently. That's what I think he said. 10 or 12. He's like, if I had 10 or 12 associates, I really feel like I had a real big firm, a successful firm. I was like, okay, can you tell me why that number is important to you? Can you tell me how that correlates to the actual success of the business? And I wasn't being a wise ass. I was serious. I wanted him to break it down, because I feel like attorneys, it's just like it's this arbitrary thing where they're like, oh, if I have X amount of associates, that equates to X amount of success. And in my view and in my experience, having done this now for almost 2 years straight, is that there is not a correlation between the two. And as a business owner, you have a duty to your business, to yourself, to run it as efficiently as possible. If that takes 12 full-time associates, okay, then so be it. But don't just do it because you think that's a round number that people will respect when you tell them. The other side of that too is that we're not trying to take the place of full-time associates necessarily. I think that there's obviously uses for both, but with the smaller firms that we work with, or the firms that maybe we were introduced when they were hiring, is that they can use our service, obviously with no commitment, in a cost-effective way to take on more volume, to get more revenue, to get more money, and also to take some of the work off their plate, to focus on finding the right associate, so that they're in a better financial position and they're not hiring somebody under pressure. Because for solos or small firms, turnover is an absolute nightmare. It's a financial nightmare. It's a work nightmare. It's going to cause you to drop the ball with, your actual work product, with your client communications, because you'll be scrambling. And so, making sure you take the time to get the right person and vet them and get a feel for them, and take whatever time you need, especially in a small firm, because it's going to be even a more closer working relationship with that person, the more it's going to benefit you in the long run. So even using it as a tool for smaller firms to hire, smartly or wisely, I think is a great use for it too. But I know I'm going in a roundabout way, but yeah. So the ideal client, is somebody who's business-minded, open-minded, looking for ways to grow their business, looking to create an efficient firm, looking to provide, the highest quality service to their clients. And so those are the ones that I've had the most success with, and they have ranged from true solo practitioners to, 10, 12 attorney firms. And so it's been interesting to see the dynamic, between those two and with the firms in between. But there really are very valid uses for freelance support within all sizes of firms like that, and across practice areas too, really.
Yeah, I think and I've talked to so many people who agree with me on this, the beginning of growth is so hard, right? It's so hard to grow any business from, zero to, that first big leap of growth where you hire someone, where you start hiring, where you start delegating.
Yeah,
That's such a
because it takes that
painful,
investment.
it's so painful. There's so much effort going on at that time, at that stage of growth. And it's so terrifying because, one wrong move could cost you a paycheck. And I think it's so great that people can have a service like yours where they're not quite there yet, but they need the help. They're starting to
Right.
maybe be working really late nights because they're the mule, and they have all these deadlines and they have all this work and they have to do the admin and they have to run the business, but they can't afford, an $80,000 associate. I think this is a great service for someone like that. But like you said, just so many uses. I love the mentor thing. I love being able to, find someone and bounce ideas off them, because I do that all the time. I'll call friends of mine.
We all do, right?
Yeah, and sometimes I'll even pay them if it's like a significant, 5 minute question. Obviously, my friend's not going to charge me for it, but if there's a legal issue that I need help on, I'm bringing you into this case. Guess what? You're my co-counsel now, and obviously I clear it with the client, but I'll be, hey, I'm bringing an employment lawyer into this because we need a real opinion on this issue that's now, been brought into our case, and the clients appreciate that. And I think it's a great way for you to be a resource for your client. No one wants to go and hire another attorney, that they've never met and go through all of that all over again when they already trust you. Having you there to hold their hand and be the intermediary and the liaison for that relationship is another great use, I think, of your service. So I feel like we could talk all day about this. And we'll probably have to have you on the show again to cover everything. But I did want to ask you, do you have any events coming up or anything that you want to share with the audience as far as, I don't know, sometimes people have promos or events or anything like that coming up?
Sure. There's a promotion. So for any firms that sign up, now we're offering, if for the first 3 months, if they submit 10 or more hours, they'll get a 10% discount up to, I think, $250 per month. So it knocks a little off of that and gets them familiar with our services. I have for anybody who might catch this in the Palm Beach area, we sponsored their upcoming, the Palm Beach County Bar Association. They have a solo small firm luncheon on Friday the 24th, and so we'll be there for that and sponsoring, and so I'll be able to talk to them a little bit about what we do as well. But if anybody up in that area wants to come check it out, would encourage you. Hopefully it'll be a good lunch.
Awesome. So that's in 2 weeks.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
2 weeks from today. I keep forgetting today's Friday. Yeah.
I know. It's been a crazy week here. I won't even get into it, but anyway.
For the next episode.
Yeah, right. So how about contacting you? What's your favorite way of communicating? Is it email? Do you have a website? Do you have a form that people fill out, a chat bot? I mean, there's so many different ways of communicating nowadays.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I want to tell everybody not to contact me on nights or weekends. Okay. I want to be clear about. No, I'm kidding.
Because you're going to download that app now, right?
So yeah, all of the above. There are contact forms on my website, the freelance firm, thefreelancefirm.com. You can also reach us by phone at 954-397-4125. And you can email me directly at steve@thefreelancefirm.com. And pretty much we're on all social media channels too, so you can always catch us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, Google My Business, I think, actually, if I remember. That one doesn't get as much use as the other ones, but yeah. But yeah, that's all the above.
Awesome. All right. Well, I thank you for being
Thank
an
you.
awesome
This was
guest.
fun. We should do it again. I feel like we could keep going for another
For
hour, you know.
sure. Next time we'll have to do like a happy hour. And instead of drinking water, I'll have like my whiskey or something.
Or we can do it live. We could do it on scene at a bar somewhere or something down
There you
there.
go. We'll have to get mics
Yeah.
for that for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
All right.
Thank
Well,
you very much. This was fun.
yes, thank you for coming on. And as a from one powerful woman to another, give your wife some props for dealing with a self-employed husband when she was pregnant, going out on his own. That's awesome that she supported you on that. That's awesome, and you guys
Yeah,
seem like you
I'm
really
sure she was white knuckled for some parts of that, but I definitely appreciate it. And
yeah.
yes, that's
Kudos
a
to
big
her.
fact.
She sounds like a cool lady. I actually meant to go into that earlier, but yeah, I wanted to bring that up before we signed off. I always got to give a shout out
Yes,
to the ladies out there that are
very
balancing
fortunate
and
for that.
doing it all. And good for you, man, for being involved with your kids and your family. That's
Thank you. Yeah, it's a plus. It's great. I'm
absolutely,
lucky to be able to do it. So yeah,
absolutely. All right, well, listen, have a great weekend, okay?
same to you. Talk to you soon.
Thanks.